why the applause is like that, because it's a very difficult film, very emotional. I remember watching it, even though we all know what the ending was going to be, still being absolutely devastated by it, even knowing what was to come. And in some ways, it was harder watching the film because we know what the conclusion was going to be. So let me just begin by saying thank you all so much for making this film. And I know that was hard, but let's thank you. Thank you all. So I have so many questions about the film and how it came to be, but I just want to begin with each of you just saying, how did you come to know about this story? And I know there's a personal connection, but each of you, how did you come to first hear about what happened?
Sure. So the short of it is that Ajika Owens was a family friend, and so that's how the story came to us. Nikole Hannah-Jones, who's a producer on the film, and I are a couple, and so we got a call. I believe the night that she was murdered, from a family member, and about what had happened, and so that was our first. How we found out about it. It wasn't a story we were pursuing. It just happened. Again, we were connected to do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. My Takima Robinson, who's my cousin, is close friends with the family, and she gave us a call, and we sprung into action to help the family.
So before I move on to Alisa and Sam, when you said gave a call and asked for support, what were they wanting at that point?
Sure. So I think at the time we didn't really know what we were going to do. We know that. So Takima, I refer to her as my sister-in-law, and she refers to me as her sister-in-law. She's Nikole's cousin, but we are all very close. She has additional family. Her family lives down there in Ocala. She flew down there. And Nikole just got on the flight with her was like, I have to be there with you to see what can we do? There's a family in distress, how can we help? And we quickly became the media team, sort of the media liaison team for the family, and the legal team also sort of leaned on us for that, because we knew without news, really we didn't know if Susan Lawrence would walk. Honestly, she wasn't arrested for a number of days, and we thought that it was possible that even after she was arrested, that the trial would maybe never happen, or she would get off, and because of Stand Your Ground. So we were tasked with kind of trying to keep the story alive in the media. And 2 months after the murder, the lawyers sent us a thumb drive which had on it all the police evidence, all the body camera footage, the majority of the material that you see in the film. And they asked us to go through it, to help them go through it, because I think they were overwhelmed by how much it was. Usually with body camera footage, it's the night of, or it's a couple hours. It's not, and Nikole got it first. You want to talk about your impression?
When we got the footage, we thought it was just going to be, like Gita was saying, we didn't know if it would just be the night of, and it turned out that it went back 2 years, all of these calls in terms of how many times Susan was calling the police on the neighborhood and the kids went back 2 years. So we found that there was a story in that.
Don't jump ahead on me now.
I know. That's why I was looking at Gita like,
Right. That's okay. That's the perfect interview. I don't even have to do anything. Y'all can just talk, which is great. But Alisa, talk about how did you first hear about the story, then we'll talk about or you can also say how you ended up getting involved after you heard about it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk for Sam and I. We decided we're in front. So Gita, Sam, and I have Message Pictures, our production company. We're also very close. Sam and Gita, Sam was Gita's mentor. Gita and I are parent friends originally, and so we knew about it the day after they got the call. And we felt like we all had to galvanize, try to get someone to shoot footage and do whatever was needed. And then when, as you know, when he's in the room, Roger Russ Williams, who introed the film, we were working on Stamp from the beginning. The film was locked, but we opened it up to put a part about Susan because, again, we did not want her to walk because there was that precedent with Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman.
As you know from Stamped and your other work, the precedent goes far back further than that. And I think all of us watched that and understood that there was a very, very big chance that Susan was going to, even without stand your ground, the odds of a white person being convicted of killing a black woman, especially a working class black woman or a black person, are very low. But before we get to that, as a storyteller myself and as a person who has excavated my own relationships and histories to tell some of my stories, that's not an easy step sometimes, right? There's a different responsibility that comes with actually using your intimate relationships to tell a story. So you went down initially because the family asked you to come. When did you start to think that what you were capturing would be something that you might want to turn into a film, and how did that process unfold?
Sure. So originally we weren't thinking about making a film. The material that we were shooting was really for local news, or to try to share with the news and with social media, again, to keep the case alive. It was really after we received the body camera footage, and it wasn't just the body camera footage that came on that thumb drive, it was also the interrogation footage, it was the ring camera video, it was the dash cam video, it was all the detective interviews that happened after the crime occurred. And I used to be an editor. I think some of you may know that. I'm very proud of that. And so I spent a couple of weeks along with Nikole because we were trying to make sense of it. It came out in a jumble. Nothing was synchronized. Then sometimes the police functioned unintentionally like multi-camera. Sometimes there were 2 of them on scene, usually 2. Other times there were 10 to 15, and there were, again, the calls, particularly the 911 calls, we had to figure out the chronology of them. So I took a couple of weeks and strung it all out into a timeline. We kind of did this investigative work. It was also in some ways grief work for us because we couldn't understand how this could happen. Like, how does someone pick up a gun to in their mind solve an incredibly trivial dispute with a neighbor over children playing in a yard they're allowed to be in. And so in stringing it out, it was after that, honestly, there was about 30 hours of material, and after we organized it and put it in a timeline, that's when I thought, we talked about it, and I was like, I think there's a film here. And we really, it was important to us, we felt it was important to get this story out. And the family also felt the same way. So that was, we spoke to Pamela Dias, who's Ajika's mother. She's the beautiful woman at the end. She's in the film. But we asked her if she would want that, if that's something she would want us to do. And she thought about it and she said yes. And we also talked about the fact that, there's no other skill set here. So I was like, this is what I can offer you. Maybe I can make a film. If it goes anywhere, we can get Ajika's story out and the story of this beautiful little community. But also too, if there's a sale, then we can support you in that way. And that's what happened. Eventually, we made the film independently. We went to Sundance, and we were able to sell it there.
This says a lot about Geeta's level of integrity, which is important when you're a documentary filmmaker, and I applaud that. I really applaud that, and it's what makes Geeta so special.
I just want to say I learned it from Sam. So we're back at you.
But I imagine because of who is in this room, you understand what that means. But of course, coming up in journalism and documentary, you're always told you can't pay your sources. No matter how desperate financially sources are, no matter how much time you're asking of them. So it isn't lost on me or other people, the decision, because these are ethics that don't come from our community,
Yeah.
right? Did you want to speak on that?
I mean,
Lisa?
we think it's really important to try to change the ecosystem around that, right? You know, people are, especially in documentaries, they're telling their most traumatic moments. And in some ways, you know, yes, they wanted to make change. We all are doing this because we want to effectuate change. It's not about money. But a woman shouldn't lose her daughter, leave her life in Georgia, uproot herself, have 4 children that she has to help to raise, right? And then they not have anything after losing their main source of income, support, and love. And so we're hoping that this spreads and it ripples out and we start to rethink that. Yes, they weren't paid for a story. We made it and then it was sold, but it was only the right thing to do to make sure that these kids who lost their mother have a future path to being secure. They left that community.
And I really applaud that. I just think that's so important and something that's not talked enough about. And it's not, you know, it's always funny when we're like, we shouldn't pay people for their story, but we're doing this work and we expect to be paid, right? We expect to be compensated, and yet the people for whom we rely on to be able to do the work have to remain what we consider pure. But it is pure, right, to be compensated for your time, and if someone's making money off of your story, the people who had to endure the trauma should. So I just have so much respect for that. Elisa, of course, one of the things that I think is so brilliant and unique about the film is that most of the film is all through the eye of the body cam or cameras, right? It's not footage that you all shot. Can you talk about that? And of course, Geeta and Nikole, you can talk about that as well. But just once you saw you had this amount of footage, how did the decision come about to say we actually want to tell this story through that footage?
Sure. I can start with it because I think I want to just shout out some other people who are in the room. My incredible editor, Viri Lieberman. Viri, can you stand up and wave? So that's Viri Lieberman in the back of the room. All right, I'm going to brag you all. Viri just is the first editor ever nominated for the Critics' Choice Awards. The first doc editor ever. So she just broke the precedent, so she's a groundbreaker. But for this film, but so I think one of the things we didn't want to go back and re-traumatize the community and the family by sitting them down and making them relive what had already happened. They've been interviewed. The police the detectives had interviewed them. So we decided, and we thought that the footage again showcased organically this beautiful community as they were before. And again, it's police body camera footage before this terrible crime happened. And it's police body camera footage, so yes, it is obviously the perspective of the police, and the community is interacting and reacting to the police. But at the same time, the police unintentionally captured them as they were, and you never get to see that. And if you make a film or anything, when a story about a crime, oftentimes you only have the aftermath. And with gun violence in this country, that's one we know all too well, right? We know that story because we live it almost every other day. And so what I really wanted to show in the story, the body camera footage felt undeniable. Again, you see this beautiful multiracial community sort of loving each other, living together, raising kids, and how this one outlier and her access to a gun, and sort of the terrible intersection of racism, of polarization, of anger, and predatory laws, and then again her access to guns led to this terrible situation.
I think it's really important to say that these are choices that are made, right? So there was a choice to live in this footage because we did shoot things. Nikole was on the ground. And Viri and Geeta were very clear that we made the choice. Sometimes you'll get a note, you don't see Ajika enough, etc. But they wanted to stick to it because they trust the audience. This is filmmaking, right? So we wanted to try to push the conventions of documentary. And I think that's also important as we evolve, right? And so there were choices made to stay with it because the audience is smart enough. There was choices made to live in this and to make it feel like a narrative thriller because we want to effectuate change, and a lot of people may come to it, right? And so it's really important that we talk about the use of it because it wasn't happenstance, and it was important to what we were doing, and it seemed, I think it's worked out. It seemed to work out that we trust you all to make your decision about what happened. Yes, Sam?
Absolutely correct.
Thank you. If Sam says it, it's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you come away watching the film, and there's no doubt that this was a choice. There's no doubt that you haven't actually ever seen a film, a documentary made this way before. And to me, there was a purity to it. There was an honesty, like, if you're doing recreations, if you're having interviews of people remembering what they talked about, it's a completely different experience than just watching it unfold. And I think that was just so brilliant because while it is police body cam, you are getting a complete sense of this community. I think I told you this, Elise. I was like, I want to know more about this community, right? It's this clearly working class, integrated community where one that probably, depending where you grew up, many of us recognize that type of community where kids were just outside playing all day and everybody's parent was watching everyone else's parent, and like that sense of protection that they had for each other. I think the body cam just so beautifully captured that. But I also know, having dabbled a little bit in documentary myself, that couldn't have been easy to pull off. That to be able to select the right footage and to edit it in a way that it still is a coherent story. Can you talk about how deciding to do that way complicated how you were able to tell the narrative?
It's the most challenging emotionally and technically, and now it is. It's the most challenging thing, and they're geniuses. Geeta and
Yeah, when we look at that footage, one of the things, just piggybacking on something that you were saying, what's so pure about that footage is that when the police come to this neighborhood, the neighborhood isn't necessarily thinking that there's a camera filming them, right? We know that because we're watching it, but they don't really know that. So you're getting their true response. So I think that actually speaks to some of those decisions, and like you're seeing something so pure and so real, that you want to stay in that. It is hard. When Geeta and I first looked at it, and I said to her, this feels like Paranormal Activity or Blair Witch Project. It has this thing where what the end is, but you watch this whole thing play out. When this went to Geeta, and then Geeta also worked with Viri with this, we saw so many different cuts and so many different decisions to, one of the things I was saying, I think we all touched on it, was we don't see enough of Ajika. Should we go and get, should we ask the family if they have some footage? Should we figure out some way to see Ajika in this? And, we had to come to the, Geeta and, came to the conclusion that, well, we're gonna have to just see a lot of Susan. We're gonna have to see this perspective, and we're gonna know the community, in this way. And, we'll learn about everybody that we need to learn about, through this vehicle. And that was a tough decision. I take my hat off to Geeta and to Viri for that.
I think we were often, but we definitely had moments where we were like, should we, again, where we thought about interviews and we thought about additional stuff. But I think the commitment, Viri was very good about it, and once we came up with this sort of mandate, when I would waver, she was like, nope, we said we're gonna live in it, like we're not gonna stray from this, we're gonna believe in it. And again, that was the decision. But I do think the community to me speaks for Ajika. Like Ajika is, and honestly, the truth is, she is part of them. You see how important she was to them, obviously by the response, by the grief you also see on the night that we lose her. So I think that for us it was, and I just want to also shout out some other people around the room. So Sam Bisbee, who is one of our producers, who's back there, Rose Arce from Soledad, O'Brien Productions.
Stand up, Sam. Stand up, man.
That's Sam Bisbee and Rose. I don't know where you are. Can you wave? Yeah, and Rose is there. But they also too believed in this vision. Like, so when we would wave her, it was like, no, we're gonna try. And Sundance seemed like the perfect place to take it because I was like, who will take this film? If it's different, who will take it? And I was like, Sundance, maybe Sundance. So that's how we ended up there.
I was gonna say, I definitely felt you got to know her through her children.
Yeah.
It was so clear what type of mother she was by her children. Sam, you were gonna say something?
I was just going to say that it kind of already touched on it. I mean, this material is unvarnished. It hasn't been. It's been edited, but not in the way that we know how sometimes we edit films. We didn't say, okay, we need more Adjika, we need some interviews. It's unvarnished, and that's what makes it special, because we all know that when you watch a lot of this police body cam stuff, it's always horrific. You say, oh my God, these police are so horrible. Not in this case. It's more subtle. That's what's really good about this film, the subtlety of it. The other thing is, Geeta said this at the very beginning, she's an editor. And she understands the thing about organization, organizing the material. And would marry the two of them together, understand.
I was the AE.
And they create a timeline. The timeline helps you understand the unfolding narrative. And then you're sharpening it, And that's what you do when you make documentaries. I mean, a lot of people don't really understand how important the editor-director relationship is in making documentaries. It's vital. It's absolutely vital.
Sam was also an editor. So here we go. A lot of us in the room.
Look, as a writer and someone who has written for documentary, everything you see is because of editors. Not everything, but it's just like the structure, the shape of something, like the most amazing details are meaningless without the proper structure and the proper editing. And so I agree, I don't think we give editors enough credit. They're never the ones who typically get to sit on the stage and talk about the work that they do. But the reason that you really enjoy and are able to move through a film and see a film from beginning to end is so often because of the editing. I just want a time check because I don't know how long I'm supposed to be. I'm glad I checked. Okay. I'm also really curious though, it's always hard to produce something like this and then know that the family is going to see it. And then to have a personal relationship with the family on top of it. There's no way I would imagine they could watch this and not feel deeply traumatized, no matter how much care. This is the worst moment of their lives. So can you talk about how you shared it with them and how you prepared them for what it would mean to have this story? I mean, it had already been national news, but this is told in a very different way that people hadn't seen before. And what was their response to it?
I mean, I can share so really the person who watched it, we did not have the kids watch it. And we have definitely tried to protect them from it. So there's been a lot of work done around that. But her mother, Pamela, who is the bravest person we know, she, before we sent it to Sundance, I think, right? Before Sundance? Before I sent it to Sundance, I said, you need to take a look at this. This is what I made. This is what we put together. And if you do not want to proceed with this, then it goes in the trash. We don't have to do this. This will never see the light of day. It could just be my process. It can go away. And she said that she watched it. She wanted to watch it alone, which really was worrisome to me, but we kind of made sure there were people on standby. She said it made her physically ill. She watched it through, she hadn't seen all of what was in the film and the footage. She'd seen some of the footage, but not all of it. She said that it made her ill, and then she had to turn it off. She had to sort of think about it, watch it in pieces, and then she said she watched it a second time, and she knew that it was something that she wanted to proceed with. She takes a lot of strength from the story of Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, who had an open casket funeral for her son after he was brutally lynched, and invited the press in, or to ask the press to distribute the photos. She felt there was a connection And she wanted the world to know what happened to her baby. That's what she said. And I know it's a very different time, obviously, where we see violence against Black bodies on repeat. And, you know, but I think the thing that to her was most important was not, we didn't, again, it was important to all of us not to show too much of Ajika after the murder, but she wanted to keep in the grief. She was like, that grief, and I don't care what it does to anybody, but that grief is the true price of gun violence. And people need to see it. And yes, it's the worst day of my grandchildren's lives, but they will understand. You know, like if we can use this to make change, then they will understand. And she was like, I will explain that to them. But that is what it looks like. You know, and that is what we don't often see, I think. So that's what she wanted. And of course, whatever she wants. So.
Yeah, we also shared it with the community, right? So this, as Geeta said, this was a great multi-generational, multiracial community. Nikole and I went down to Ocala, Florida, and we just decided we were going to show them, and they came, community members and neighbors came. Similar, there was a very visceral reaction. A lot of them were talking to the screen at Susan, and you know, saying a lot of things that we hadn't heard before. And there was many times when Nikole and I felt like maybe this wasn't what we should be doing because the reactions were so big. At the end of the screening, we were in a meeting room and they circled up. So they moved chairs together and started talking amongst themselves, including Pam, Ajika's mother, and then started thanking us because they said that they never want another community to go through what they did. Only one family still lives on that street. So that beautiful community that you see was decimated. It's really important to say when we talk about the footage that the reason we have so much of this police body cam footage is because Susan was setting up this premeditated defense, right, to victimize Ajika. And so they felt that. But they were very clear that they wanted it to be out there because no other community should have that happen to them. And they talked about how much they loved her and loved the kids. And so we felt like we were doing the right thing by them, even though at the time when they were first watching it and talking to the screen, we were questioning it.
Anyone else want to speak on that before we? Well, again, did you have something else?
I just wanted to thank Brown Girls Doc Mafia, which is the beating heart of documentary film for Black and brown girls. And I also want to thank the DGA for this screening and for supporting.
And PGA and ACE. Yes. And then Geeta, do you want to say, if Pam was here, she's not with us, but do you want to tell the story that Pam always wants us to impart?
Oh yeah, so Pamela and Takima Robinson, my sister-in-law, started, and two things. They started an organization called standinginthe.gapfund.org. That's so if you guys want to go on there to find out how they're working to support families and change policy. So that's an impact campaign. It doesn't end with the film, the work.
Families affected by race-based violence.
Yeah, standinginthe.gapfund.org. And Pam tells a story about how Ajika was this bright, beautiful person. You know, she was really vibrant, she was really funny, a lot of big dreams. She was 35, but she wanted to better her life. So she wanted to be an entrepreneur. And she had all these schemes to do stuff and to kind of like take over the world. And her mother they'd talk every day. They were like sisters. And she said her mother would laugh at her. She tells us she would kind of laugh at her sometimes because her story, you know, her schemes were to her like, you know, were maybe not well planned, or, you know, as moms and kids do. She would be like, really, that's what you're gonna do? And she said, one of the last things Ajika said to her, and she would say it to her often, is, Mom, just wait. You know, you laugh at me, but you just wait. One day the whole world is gonna know my name. So that is what we are left with, and we're grateful to all of you because now you're part of that. I think for her mother, this is her legacy, and you will hopefully remember her name, and that's kind of what we're trying to carry on with the film. So thank you all.
Thank you, Nikole. Thank you so much, Nikole.
And I think there's a reception. Yeah, there's a reception upstairs, y'all. So please come upstairs. Have a drink.